I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 School Board to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Here.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Here.
Mr. Lefevre?
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mrs. Burke?
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome. We'll begin tonight's meeting with recognitions. Dr. Cates.
Good evening and welcome to everyone who was able to join us tonight. We have some wonderful students and staff members to celebrate this evening. At this time I'd like to call Director of Athletics and Activities, Eric Winkowski, to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Cates. Board of Education and Dr. Cates, thank you for taking some time to honor some really talented musicians tonight. Students, I'm going to ask you as your sponsor introduces you to please walk forward, accept your award, and stand here next to the podium. Additionally, any family members that are here, as your student is initially announced, if you could stand and please be recognized, because we want to recognize all of you. Helping present the students tonight are FREMD Assistant Principal Eric Dolan, Conant Principal Julie Novak, and Assistant Principal Mark Langer, Schaumburg Principal Tim Little, and Assistant Principal Michelle Napier. So we'll get started. First, I'm going to introduce John Teichert from FREMD High School. JT is in his third year of teaching at FREMD High School. His responsibilities include leading the Wind Ensemble, Symphonic Winds, and Jazz Combo while co-directing and assisting the Jazz Ensemble, Viking Marching Band, and Pep Band, and all the other ensembles. JT.
Okay. I'm one of two band directors at FREMD, and first I just want to say my colleague Matt Moore would be here tonight. As luck has it, he has two children of his own who are in band. One is at a high school band concert now, and the other is middle school band concert, so he's on dad duty, but he'd be here as well. First up, we have Julia Finnegan, accompanied by Robert and Ann Finnegan. In addition to being a really fantastic horn player, Julia is involved in cross country and track, and something I really admire about her is even with her academic and athletic schedule, she always finds time to take that horn home and practice, so really quite a great student to have. Next we have Mary Tang. I teach the two intermediate bands, so I don't get to have Mary every day, but I do get to get into class on occasion. And something I really admire about Mary is she is a super serious musician, like very detail-oriented, but not an over-serious person. Her personality is very fun-loving and really adds to the atmosphere in the front bands. And next we have Nick Zoblik. Nick is a senior in our program, and he plans to pursue a career in music. He participates in the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestras. This is his second time making All-State. During Period 7, which is our sophomore band, Nick often comes down and helps our younger trumpets out, and we're really going to miss all that he does for our band program. So thank you and congrats, FREMD students.
Next, I'd like to introduce Marla Caballero. Marla is in her 25th year of teaching at FREMD High School. In those 25 years, she's taken the orchestra from 8 students to well over 100 students at FREMD High School. In 2014, Marla was named the Outstanding School Teacher for the Illinois chapter of the American String Teachers Association, and Marla is also a proud District 211 grad.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Most of us probably know what IMEA is all about, but and they changed it a few years ago to ILMEA because there's too many other states that have an I. But just for some perspective, from around the state, there's probably about 10,000 students who audition at the district level, which is kind of like a regional idea in sports. And then it gets narrowed down. Those students are selected for district, and then students, if they rank high enough in their prospective ensembles, then get selected for All-State. And there's 2 levels at the All-State level as well: band, choir, orchestra, jazz band, vocal jazz, and future music educators as well. So kids can participate in any of those. But I am very thankful that I get to take this time to recognize these students, so thank you for taking your precious time as well. It is my pleasure to introduce these students. We had 5 students from Fremd Orchestra who were selected for All-State Honors, 2 of which could not be here tonight. But I am excited to recognize Tom Philippuk, who is here with his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Philippuk. Tom is a junior violist, and he is an active pianist and has studied piano privately for many years. However, he was selected for All-State for his viola playing. Side note, he has never taken a private lesson on viola, but that, I think, is a true testament to his work ethic, but also just the level of musicianship that he has. Tom is a leader in the Fremd Symphony Orchestra. He's been a member of the District 211 Honors Orchestra. Last year, Tom was one of the winners of the Fremd Concerto competition on piano. And I always like to ask the kids what their favorite memory was from, or something that stood out from All-State. Tom's favorite memory was when they got to hear the contrabassoon part in Sorcerer's Apprentice for the first time, and everyone started laughing because it sounded so funny. If you don't know what a contrabassoon is, it's entertaining. So I definitely recommend that you take a listen on YouTube. But it is pretty entertaining. But congratulations, Tom, on your accomplishments. Next is Yenna Kim, sophomore violinist, who's here with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kim, and her little sister. In addition to being an outstanding violinist, Yenna is also incredibly humble and kind. Yenna's favorite memory of All-State was finding out that she got principal chair for second violin in Honors Orchestra on the bus as we were all waiting to get to the back to the rehearsal area. So congratulations, Yenna. And finally, Justin Young, senior violinist and violist, is here. Actually, was going to be here with his dad. Come on, keep coming. But drove himself, the perks of being a senior. Justin is a member of Fremd's debate team, the Schaumburg Youth Symphony Orchestra. He is also my student intern this year with the Philharmonic Orchestra, and recently performed the first movement of Khachaturian's Violin Concerto as a winner of Fremd's concerto competition. Besides being committed to improving himself as a musician, Justin is currently mentoring 3 different violinists in Philharmonic Orchestra, sharing his experience and knowledge and helping them grow as well. I think one of the highlights for me with Justin, and I use him as an example a lot, is that he auditioned for district IMEA every year and didn't make it, freshman, sophomore, junior, but kept auditioning, and this year made it. And not only made it to district, but made it to All-State. And so I think that's an awesome lesson in perseverance and setting your mind on a goal and going for it. But one of his favorite memories was learning how to play the trumpet in the exhibition hall during one of the breaks during rehearsals. How did it go? Yeah. So anyway, congratulations, Justin. Thank you.
All right, next we'll bring up Conant's Devin Gadzicki. Devin is in her second year of teaching at Conant High School, coming to us from St. Charles East High School. Devin received her undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois and is currently working towards a master's in music education from Illinois State University. And Devin is a proud graduate of District 211.
All right, so first we're going to talk about Charles Lin. He is here represented by Shu Hui, his mother. Thank you. Charles is a junior that passionately plays violin in our top orchestra at Conant. He made District 7 IMEA and then proceeded to All-State to play 9th chair and 2nd violin section in the Honors Orchestra. This year, not only in orchestra, Charles has had great achievements in music, where he recently played for our school and won our variety show on piano. Way to go, Charles. Makiba Kurita is here with her parents Shigeru and Yumi. Makiba is a junior that plays violin. She went to Allstate and played in the first violin section, 7th chair. Her biggest musical accomplishment this year, however, was placing 6th chair in the first violin section at NAFME Nationals, held in Anaheim, California. So for nationals, you first have to make your All-State in the state level, and then you audition based on your placement there and can go on and to play nationals with people all around, students from all around the nation. So it's a great accomplishment. Her hard work never ceases to amaze us. Congratulations, Makiva. And next we have James Prusel, who is here with his parents, Walter and Stephanie. James is a junior that vivaciously plays viola. He was at state this year for 2 reasons. Firstly, he plays 7th chair in the Viola Honors Orchestra, and he also submitted a musical composition and won 1st place in the instrumental chamber solo composition contest throughout the state. So he was able to perform in the orchestra and share his own musical contributions. Another fabulous accomplishment was that he too went to nationals in California with Makiba and another student we have here, where he performed as the co-principal or 2nd violist in the orchestra. What a wonderful musical year for you, James.
All right, next we'll move on to Schaumburg High School. Vinny Inandino. Mr. Inandino is the director of bands. Has been a band director at Schaumburg High School since 2011. He's also has been the music department chair since 2014. Vinny has degrees, I think he's doing the Big Ten tour. He's got degrees from Northwestern, University of Illinois, and the University of Michigan. So you've got a few more left.
All right, good evening. Along with his parents, Troy and Jennifer, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Joaquin Laneson. Joaquin is a passionate, hardworking, and caring student leader, and his list of musical accomplishments speaks for itself. 3 years as bass trombonist for the Wind Symphony, Jazz Ensemble, and District 211 Honor Band, 2 years as a trombone marching band section leader and playing in the 211 Honors Orchestra and Harper College Wind Symphony, and 3 IHSA Solo and Ensemble Best of Day Awards. And as a senior, membership into the ILMEA District 7 Band, the Jazz Reading Band 1, and the All-State Honors Band. Outside of music, Joaquin is involved in a variety of AP courses and is a member of National Honor Society and Scholastic Bowl. He's known for his commitment to learning, his relentless positivity, and his great sense of humor, such as when, as a sophomore, he wrote me a formal letter of intent to persuade us that he should be allowed to march with a bass trombone. He really loves that instrument. Next year, Joaquin plans to study biochemistry and go into genetics research. I have no doubt he'll be highly successful in his future endeavors, and I look forward to proudly calling Joaquin an alumnus of our school and band program. Congratulations.
And our last presenter tonight is from Schaumburg High School. It's Susan Carlson. Susan's been teaching orchestra in District 211 for 14 years, along with directing Schaumburg's orchestra. Susan is also currently an active member in the Elgin Symphony Orchestra.
Here with her mother, Tammy Kasperi, is Emily Kasperi. Emily is a sophomore at Schaumburg High School and is a highly talented and hardworking musician. A couple things that make her unique are her versatility and self-motivation. She plays and has had lessons on cello, viola, violin, and piano, and is learning the flute, clarinet, oboe, and guitar on her own as well. She plays first chair in the Honors Orchestra at the convention, which is indeed an impressive achievement for a sophomore. Impressive, period, but as a sophomore. She has been involved with the Schaumburg Youth Orchestra program and at all levels, and is currently in the SYO and the Chicago Youth Concert Orchestra. She's also been in the 211 Honors Orchestra the last 2 years, District 7 the last 2 years. She's in Tri-M and received a Best of Day performance this year at IHSA. This is her 3rd year playing also in the Elmhurst College Cello Choir,
has attended the Contrast Quartet Summer Chamber Program in Virginia and has been a part of the Schaumburg Youth Chamber Music Program. She has shared her gifts in various settings in the community, and every day she shares her talents with the SHS Symphony. She is a strong role model for her peers, and in her gentle, quiet manner, uses words when necessary. Congratulations, Emily. Matthew Nolan, here with his parents, Kumiko and Scott Nolan. This is Matthew's second year as an all-state musician. Last year he was a second violinist, and this year he placed in the first violin section. He has been a member of the District 7 Orchestra for 3 years and a member of the 211 Honors Orchestra for 3 years. This past November, he, along with Makiba, participated in the All-National Honor Symphony Orchestra hosted by NAFME, which stands for National Association for Music Education. Additionally, he continues to be a member of the Midwest Conservatory Philharmonic, of which he has been a member since 2014. He has also learned the viola this year and has been a great addition to that section. Matt is simply an outstanding leader in the symphony. His attention to detail is pretty supreme. Outside of playing the violin, he continues to enjoy his place on the SHS cross-country team. He is also a fluent Japanese speaker and has passed the AP Japanese test and received the seal of biliteracy in Japanese. Micah Edwards was unable to be here this evening, but she is involved with an honors orchestra. But she and Emily and Matt all play chamber music together, and I just wanted to make a note of that because I think it speaks to their commitment to music and also to their endearing friendship. So thank you and for your time.
To recognize high school students who excel in volunteerism and community service, the Daily Herald sponsored its 18th annual leadership team for 2018-2019. I'm proud to announce that High School District 211 had 4 representatives named to the 10-member first team. These outstanding students were recently featured in a special section of the March 7th edition of the Daily Herald. On behalf of the Board of Education and the High School District 211 community, I'd like to congratulate these students on being selected as Daily Herald Leadership Team Award winners. Board President Mrs. Burke will present each of them with a certificate in just a few moments. Each student has selected a faculty member to introduce him or her this evening. Unfortunately, 2 of our recipients, Megan John from Fremd High School and Rajat Mittal from Conant High School, are unable to be with us tonight. At this time, I would like to invite the 2 faculty sponsors to introduce and share their comments about the student leaders. First, from Palatine High School is Counselor Alonzo Ramirez, followed by Schaumburg High School English teacher Gina Pistelli.
Thank you, Dr. Cates. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the Board of Education and the Board of Education and the District Administration for having us here tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce Lydia Mena as a member of the Daily Herald Leadership Team. Lydia is joined here tonight by her parents, Jose, Anna, and sister Elizabeth. I would like to start with a quote. There has to be a pioneer, the individual with the courage, the ambition to overcome the obstacles that always develop when one tries to do something worthwhile, new, and different. When I read this quote, I immediately thought of you, Lydia. Lydia is the type of person that will not take no for an answer and smile at you while doing it. She is the type of person that will develop an idea and surround herself with the people that will help her accomplish that idea, that goal. Lydia will be the first one to tell you that she was shy and introverted when she entered high school. What she will not tell you is that she has slowly and methodically become one of the finest student leaders to walk the halls of our high school. Lydia's work with the National Hispanic Institute is truly remarkable. NHI is an organization that develops student leaders through comprehensive summer workshops. Summer workshops that really focus on leadership and growth. NHI's goal is for the youth to increase their capacity to express thought, respond to intellectual challenge, and work in organized endeavors. Lydia came back from her summer experience at NHI a changed person. She worked diligently to start her own chapter of NHI at our high school, and I am proud to say that 2 years later it is one of the strongest clubs at Palatine High School. Lydia has organized fundraisers, community meetings that have benefited the underserved in our area. Lydia has also collaborated with our local community center as a member of the Teen Advisory Board, where she has led initiatives that brought students together from different socioeconomic backgrounds in order to bring better communication and address the needs of our community. Lastly, Lydia, I have to be honest with you. I didn't see this coming. 4 years ago, you were just the shyest thing. And now every time I see Lydia in the hallway, you kind of scare me. Because it's Mr. Ramirez, we have to go to a meeting. Mr. Ramirez, we have to organize this. Mr. Ramirez, we got to get this going. I'm going to miss that. Just your character. You're a testament to others of the importance of hard work and service over self. Lydia's greatest gift is her grit and her deep desire to provide opportunities for students from all socioeconomic backgrounds. Lydia will be continuing her education in the fall at the University of Illinois Chicago or University of IIT, where she'll be studying architecture. We wish you nothing but the best moving forward, Lydia.
Good evening. I'd first like to welcome Donna and Kevin Pasquarelli and Megan's grandfather, Joseph Kowalski. If you could stand up and be recognized. And I am lucky to get to introduce tonight Megan Pasquarelli. I had the privilege of having Megan as a student in my English class during her freshman year. And this year, Megan became my student intern, so I get to see her every day. And this interaction has helped me gain a close-up perspective about Megan as a person who has already begun to understand her power to change the world in a positive way. At the beginning of her sophomore year, Megan came to me and asked if I would help her publicize a charitable opportunity to the SHS community. She told me that she had spent time at the W.E.B. Du Bois Elementary School in Chicago since 2012 when she was in 5th grade. She spent this time organizing, wrapping, and distributing Christmas gifts to the Du Bois students. In November, each of the Du Bois students writes a wish list to Santa, and they list 3 items they would like to receive. Donors accept these lists and provide the gifts for the Du Bois students. Megan's goal was to bring these wish lists to SHS, and I arranged for her to speak at an English department meeting, and several teachers were inspired by Megan's bravery, because we're a big department and we're kind of rowdy, to become donors that year. In addition to giving teachers the opportunity to become donors, Megan also started a winter gear drive. SHS teachers provided boxes in classrooms, and SHS students were encouraged to bring in gently used coats, hats, mittens, scarves, and new socks. Each year that has passed has seen an increase in the donations and Megan's level of involvement. This year, Megan needed a trailer to deliver the donations to the school in Chicago. Megan's determination not only keeps children warm in winter, but teaches them the lesson that generosity is universal. And I know that maybe they don't all know you, but they will remember what you've done for them, and I will remember what you've done for them. Thanks, Megan.
At this point in the meeting, we were going to recognize Bowling Coach of the Year, Dan Fligler from Hoffman Estates High School, but Dan is not able to be with us tonight, and the reason for that is that he is got a late call to adopt a little baby. So he was able to go down to Texas. The actual full story is that 1 year ago, Dan adopted a little baby, and this year is the sibling of that little baby from last year. So he got an unexpected gift, and we'll recognize Dan next month. So come back for that. At this time, I'd like to call to the podium Michelle Kalish. Michelle, now a counselor at Palatine High School, began coaching gymnastics at Conant High School as an assistant coach in 1995. In 1999, she took over as the Cougars' head girls gymnastics coach. She coached the girls' team for 8 years, putting together a very impressive regular record of 52 wins with only 13 losses. With Michelle at the helm, the Cougars' girls gymnastics team claimed 6 regional titles, 4 sectional titles, had more than 30 state qualifiers, and made 5 state championship appearances. In those 5 state championship appearances, her teams finished 3rd once, 2nd twice, and were crowned the IHSA state champions in 2006. This year, Michelle was inducted into the Illinois High School Gymnastics Coaches Association Hall of Fame. Michelle, congratulations for this outstanding honor, and thank you for all you have done and continue to do throughout High School District 211. Please come forward to receive a certificate from Board President Musia Burke. John Kane, please come forward. John began coaching wrestling at Conant High School in 1991, starting as an assistant coach under Hall of Fame coach Jim Cartwright. 9 years later, in 2000, John took over as the Cougars' head coach, a position he held until being named athletic director in 2008. During his time with the wrestling program, he coached 51 state qualifiers, 18 state place winners, and 5 state champions. John's team record as a head coach was 111 wins, 61 losses, and 1 tie. I bet you still know who that is, don't you? Under his leadership, the Cougars won 3 mid-suburban league championships, 4 regional championships, and 1 sectional championship, and 3 of John's teams placed among the top 4 in the state. This year, John was inducted into the Illinois Wrestling Coaches and Officials Hall of Fame. Congratulations, John, on this outstanding recognition, and thank you for all you have done for Conant High School and District 211 throughout the years. Please come forward.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to congratulate all our students and staff here this evening for your accomplishments. It's really, truly our pleasure to get to hear all about it. We will take a short recess to allow for any photographs, and then we'll begin our business portion of the meeting. Okay, we will begin our business portion with citizens' appearances and presentation. Is there anyone signed up? Okay, no one has currently signed up to speak to the Board of Education. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the Board of Education? Okay, seeing none, we will move along. Next, we have our presentation. Dr. Cates?
Sure. Each year we present the budget to you over a series of weeks and months. The timing of the year requires us to present information to you regarding our upcoming projects that we have planned for the summer. These often involve extensive planning and some major expenditures. So to start the budget description and to weave in some of the facilities components of that, we have with us Lauren Hummel and Chris Contney. We're very pleased to have their expertise, and they'll talk through several components of the facilities and capital planning as we start the sequence again relative to our budget planning as well.
Thank you. I'd like to just start by saying that I'm pleased to be here with Chris Contney, and he does a phenomenal job of directing the facilities of the district, and we are pleased to have him with us and presenting his last presentation on facilities as he plans for retirement. So he's done a tremendous job.
Thank you, Lauren.
Our facilities are certainly an integral component of the educational experience that our kids have every day that they are within our schools, and we have provided the board with a number of reports and updates on the progress of our long-range facility plan. Tonight, we are pleased to be able to provide you with further information as it pertains to the projects that are currently underway, as well as those that we are planning for the future and how those relate to our overall strategic plan. Certainly for each and every one of you that have stepped into our facilities, you are aware of the magnitude that they possess. Excuse me. When you walk in, you do not realize that the facilities are 40 to 50 plus years old because they have been very well maintained by our skilled custodial and maintenance staff, as well as the routine upkeep and maintenance projects that we have underway to keep them in a position that they currently are, and in order to support the programs that we have for both our students and for our operations. Every day we are maintaining over 2 million square feet of interior space, as well as 220 acres of school grounds. Also noteworthy is the fact that we have over 1 million square foot of roofs within our campuses. Each year we provide the Board of Education with an update as it pertains to the organizational effectiveness and facility quality priorities within our strategic plan. Here you can see that we've had a number of priorities that were established pertaining to our facilities. Most noteworthy is that we had the 10-year improvement plan that was developed in year 1, and we have continued to provide updates on our progress throughout that. A number of other accomplishments as well. As we are in year 3 of our strategic plan right now, we have a couple items that are identified here. One is to identify our auditorium needs. I will inform you that we are underway with an auditorium study right now that is just assessing our current spaces and facilities to understand where it is that we could potentially gain some efficiencies within the existing footprint that we have in each of our auditoriums. We also have been replacing the stadium turf and tracks on each of our campuses, and we'll talk a little bit more about that this evening.
So when I started, I didn't need these, but as time goes on, I do, so excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Last summer provided us with the opportunity to complete several and begin several capital improvement projects in chorus with our strategic plan. Last September, 2 weeks ahead of schedule, we opened our stadiums at Schaumburg and Fremd High Schools with the replacement of their stadium turf and their stadium tracks. Last summer, all 5 of our schools recognized significant improvement to their tennis courts. All 54 courts across the district were repaved and resurfaced in order to provide a more long-standing playing surface. As you can imagine, just based on the travel on our roads right now with this weather, our freeze and thaw cycles in the Midwest provide us with challenges to keep our courts in the proper condition. Conant High School's bathroom renovation was completed in time for the opening of school last fall. This was our second building to see a complete update in plumbing, electricity, and fixtures. And as a side note, for whatever reason, everybody gets so excited about hand dryers. You know, no more rolled towels, right? So, and then finally, in the bottom right of this slide, Conant Athletic Field renovation. That construction began last May. As with Fremd, this will be a year-plus project in length, and it will address major drainage upgrades, irrigation, and field amenities. With 45 days of rain and weather delays between last May and last November, this project has seen some challenges. However, we are on schedule to open the fields in August, and I will note, weather permitting. Our Fremd Field renovation is complete and waiting Mother Nature's cooperation for this season's first pitch of a softball and a baseball and the first kick of a soccer ball. Next slide. This slide provides us with the future field configuration at Conant High School. The area outlined in green to the west is the only area of the fields that has not been touched by this project. All other fields are being completely reconstructed and will continue to provide practice and playing fields. The practice fields outlined in red for our fall athletes. To the Hoffman Media Center. I was very proud to be included in the opening of the Hoffman Estates Media Center. That just happened last week. This 21st century learning and research space is already filled to capacity with students from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. As with our other 4 media centers, they are all used after school as well by a variety of clubs and activity groups, provide meeting spaces, as well as evening locations for our students to study. Hoffman completes the cycle for our own District 211 Central Maintenance Team, who took each of these projects from demolition to completion. I'd like to get off script a little bit and just share a quick story with you that has already came through the wires. We have a student at Hoffman High School that has shared a story which is really, it's very dear. Actually, it was the student's parent who has indicated to us that back freshman year put $30 on their student's account for the cafeteria. And now you this parent kept checking and checking, and we still have $30 on the card, and now this is a couple years later, and for whatever reason, this individual the cafeteria was not quite the setting for them. And now the parents saying, what's going on? Like within a week, $30 is gone, and my child, your student, my student, is over in the media center at Hoffman Estates High School all the time, and now it's just costing me money. So kind of a cute story, but really just that space and how it is used by so many students and the staff in the community in so many different ways. It really have been a hit across the district, and a sincere appreciation to the board for the opportunity to provide those great spaces.
As we look forward to the projects that are planned for this coming summer, there are 3 main categories of projects: that of our life safety projects, our capital improvement projects, and our operations and maintenance projects. The way that they are delineated here on the slide is by fund, or how they will be paid for, essentially. We will go through detail on each of these projects, but wanted to just share with you that we do have a number of improvements that will be planned in each of the 3 categories. Earlier this week, we received notification that our life safety study has been processed by the State Board of Education. We are aware that once the State Board approves the study, that we must begin to complete projects that were identified on that study within 6 months. This is a list here of the projects that are planned for this summer. Obviously, with the knowledge that we would likely receive notification in the spring, we did plan for these in advance of that, and all have been projects that were approved on the final life safety study. So taking place this summer at Palatine High School, we will have some replacement of our domestic hot water system. The current system that's in place is over 30 years old. It's a single boiler system, and the new system that will be installed is one that will be much more efficient, as well as provide some system redundancy with the implementation of a 3-boiler system. At Conant High School, we will be replacing the cooling units that are on the rooftop over there. They supply the cooling to the kitchen and cafeteria areas, and are over 20 years old, and they will be eager to have those replaced for the start of the school year in August, when it does get extremely warm in the kitchens. Hoffman Estates High School will go into a little bit more detail on the roof replacement plan over there, but we will be replacing a series of roof areas that are over 30 years old. We are replacing some components of the elevator at Hoffman Estates High School that are original in the elevator, including the electronic controls and the hoistway. The actual elevator cab itself will remain as is, with just some refresh within the interior. We have a number of door replacements that we'll take at Hoffman Estates High School, some replacement of existing exhaust fans and ductwork in the autos shop, some added fire separation at the mechanical walls and the mechanical areas at Hoffman Estates High School, a rebuild of some electrical panels, and finally, in all of our schools, we will be tying our carbon monoxide detectors into our fire alarm panel, which will provide for an immediate notification into our annunciator panel should we have an alarm that's being deployed.
At this point in the year, next fiscal year's capital improvement projects have been designed, vetted, and either bid or in the process of being bid for the work to begin this May. In the next few slides, I'll highlight some of our pending facility renovations. First, the exciting stuff, roofs. As part of our ongoing roof replacement plan, Hoffman Estates will see a significant amount of work this summer. Specifically, replacement will occur over the math, science, and English areas. No better time to touch these academic areas with such a project as when the building is closed for the summer, as Hoffman Estates will be. And next, we continue at Hoffman Estates High School, which will be the third school to see bathroom renovations. As with Schaumburg and Conant, this will be a project completed this summer, again, when the building is closed. Specifically, 9 sets of multi-stall restrooms and 3 individual restrooms will be renovated and constructed. And on to Palatine and Hoffman. It will be their turn to have their stadium tracks resurfaced and playing surfaces replaced. This work will begin in May, right after the spring seasons have been completed, and will be completed in August for the first day of fall workouts. In the 2019-2020 year, we will continue to upgrade our building security and camera systems. We'll be increasing the number of LED fixtures, with the primary focus this next year being the gymnasiums, and begin a replacement cycle of stadium sound systems, beginning with Palatine High School. Our parking lot renovations will continue and will be highlighted on our next slide. We also have several pieces of maintenance equipment that have outlasted their life cycle, which will be reflected in the 19-20 operations and maintenance budget. And finally, on to parking lots. While each of our buildings will see some level of parking lot repair this coming summer, much of the summer's work will take place at Hoffman Estates High School for what we refer to as Phase 2 of this plan. In Phase 1 last summer, we focused on the main entrance off of Higgins, as well as the bus lanes. This year, we will be addressing the area to the south, which is the student drop-off and pickup lanes, and the traffic flow in the east lot, as well as the relocation of the propane tank. Thank you.
This list here should look very familiar. We've presented this information in the past. This is a list of the projects that were identified on the 10-year capital improvement plan in the strategic plan. Provides a summary of the outstanding items and the locations of those items, along with some additional detail on the age and condition. Here is a summary of those exact projects laid out over a multi-year plan and the fund by which they would be budgeted or paid for. Highlighted in the green box here are the projects that we just reviewed with you that are planned for this coming summer. As we take a look ahead to the summer of 2020, we are in the preliminary planning phases for those projects, and we'll be bringing the board additional information as we finalize those details, but we know that we have one remaining track and turf replacement at Conant High School that we will be looking to complete, and we know that we will continue on with our washroom and locker room renovations. The center section here is the Life Safety Fund, and you can see that we have information that is not yet completed. Having just received our life safety survey back, we will be actively working to lay out a plan for the completion of those projects over the next several years. And then again, just in our operations and maintenance fund, we have a number of items that are more routine in nature, upkeep, carpet replacement, those types of things that will be funded on an annual basis as well. And speaking of funding, as we look at each of the 3 funds that we've discussed, there are different sources of funding for each of these. Most importantly, all of these projects are being recommended to continue to be funded debt-free. We've made a commitment to the Board of Education that we would do that as long as it is financially responsible, and we have laid out a plan by which we are able to do that. In the Capital Projects Fund, the source of revenue into that fund will be interfund transfers that will come from the Operations and Maintenance Fund. These funds will be made in July each year and will supply the necessary funding to complete those projects. In the Life Safety Fund, we will be levying funds into the Working Cash Fund. This is a part of our regular operating levy by which it is restricted on an annual basis by the increase in CPI. These funds will be then transferred into the Life Safety Fund and will be paying for those projects free of debt and again just through our annual operating means. And then in our Operations and Maintenance Fund, we will be utilizing funds within the allocation of our annual budget, and that will be reviewed on an annual basis. We do have additional information that will be coming. There's information in your board materials tonight on 2 of these funds. We'll have additional information that will be coming in future months for your review. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Great presentation. Before we ask some questions, Dr. Cates, did you want to make some?
I did. I also wanted to take a moment following the presentation to let you know, Chris, that we have sincerely appreciated the mark that you have left on your work overseeing facilities. I believe it includes all of the media centers and include many, many other projects as well. And so we are sincerely grateful for that. 5 years ago, Chris was doing one job, and for the last 5 years, he's been doing 2 jobs, and one of them has been overseeing facilities. So we are sincerely grateful, and we are glad to have this moment to highlight your work here as we reach the months of April and May. So thank you for your service to District 211 in so many ways, but certainly overseeing our facilities.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Dan. It means a lot to me.
All right. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick ones. For the classroom renovations, are we doing that with in-house staff like we did the media centers, or what are we looking at in 2023 to 25 that we're setting aside a large sum?
The classroom renovations, we did identify that a number of the classrooms would be updated to reflect kind of the modern 21st century classrooms. So those types of projects would be identified and likely completed with our operations and maintenance staff. The vision for those is updated spaces that would be collaborative, have additional access to technology, so a lot of furniture and just mobile settings for them, if you will.
Okay.
The other thing is just reviewing any other departmental updates that would be needed as far as certain classrooms, if there is if there are other needs that have evolved that would require some programming changes, and we would allocate the funds at that point as well.
Okay, and then we're looking at doing auditorium updates. Are we at the end of the life cycle on those, or what's driving our research into auditorium updates?
We know that we are very tight on space in our auditoriums. We are not, so we are looking to see how we can be as efficient as possible with the space that we have to support those spaces, because we do know that they are one of the areas that have the greatest number of students throughout the day. We have not committed to any necessary improvements at this time. We are just underway with the study to understand what those improvements would be. I don't know if you'd add anything else to that, but.
Exactly right. Just learning more as far as what potentially the needs are of the school and the community in those spaces.
And then my last question was, over at Hoffman Estates, I noticed we're not going to do any resurfacing on the west or northwest corner of the lot. Is there a reason that we're not taking advantage of the mobilization at this point, and why we would stage that if there's no classes or if the school's closed, why we wouldn't just resurface everything at the same time and put them on the same life cycle?
So specifically in the parking lot, we did entertain that, and it had been on the paper for a little bit as far as more than one conversation. We didn't feel that was the best use of funds at this point, because specifically we'd be looking to possibly move the buses in the future to the back of the school. We're not ready to make that commitment based on our propane buses, and we need to increase the number in that fleet. We did not want diesel fumes in the back as it sits right now, so that there could be a phase 3 in the future, but we're not convinced of that yet. We wanted to take more of a conservative look at that particular space to make sure that that is exactly what we wanted to do.
So that the age of the pavement in that area is...
We can definitely get through a couple more years before we resurface that. and the west and the north lots back by the freshman baseball
So
field.
we have to remobilize in a couple of years and bid that?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I do not believe at this point it would be a complete replacement. It would simply be a grind and a repave.
I just have a quick question. I'd like to know if you could provide us with a schedule of when these projects are supposed to start, project and approximate time when they'll be completed, if that's possible.
Absolutely. We can definitely put together a schedule for you, so you have that, as well as the scheduled completion time. We are currently as bids are being approved, our next step then is to meet with our contractors in the school, establish those start dates based on their calendars and the completion date, and those will be available closer to April timeframe, and I'm certainly glad to share those with Dr. Cates and the board, most definitely.
Thank you.
No problem. Including the Conant Fields, which I know is a much longer project, which we're scheduled to finish those the beginning of August, but certainly it's nice to always have a reference.
Right.
Any others? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
This will bring us to our consent agenda. The suggested motion is that the consent agenda be as approved as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Okay, this will bring us to our special reports. We have our Freedom of Information Act request for any questions or comments. We were also given our enrollment projections. Any questions or comments?
I do have a question in regards to that. It looks like we're going to have quite a bit of growth, in about 4 or 5 years. And Palatine, since it's quite a large school, doesn't seem to have a problem. At least I don't think so. Fremd, I'm just wondering, Fremd looks like it might have a considerable amount of students coming in. What are some of the thoughts in regards to that? Would we be able to handle it, or?
We anticipate we will. We have had additional students beyond what we have now previously, and while anytime you have more students, you feel it. We have had more students than we anticipate having, and we've been able to serve them at Fremd. So we feel comfortable that we're adequate, with the space that we have and will have.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any others? Illinois High School Association Letter of Appreciation for your review. Questions or comments? Okay, this brings us to our unfinished business. We have our proposed policy revision of the school calendar. The suggested motion is that the board policy file ICA school calendar be revised as proposed and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The second suggested motion, that the board policy file GCBF procedure for pay deduction be revised as proposed and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to our new business. We have in-service dates for 2019-2020. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approves August 29th, 2019, October 23rd, 2019, November 8th, 2019, February 14th, 2020, February 21st, 2020, and May 15th, 2020 as shortened days for in-service training of certified staff and special events, of which each school may choose a maximum of 2 days for 2019-2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have our 2019-2020 tentative budget, debt service, capital projects, working cash, and fire prevention life safety funds that were provided for our review. Questions or comments? We have benefit consulting brokerage services. The suggested motion that the Board of Education retain Hub International Limited to provide insurance consulting and brokerage services for a period beginning April 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022 at an annual cost of $85,800.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. LaFever. Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mrs. Burke.
Aye. We have our auditing services for fiscal years 2019, 2020, and 2021. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education hire Baker Tilly Virchow Kraus LLP to provide auditing services for fiscal years 2019 in an amount not to exceed $30,250. For fiscal year 2020, an amount not to exceed $31,150. And for fiscal year 2021, an amount not to exceed $32,050.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a little concern with extending a contract for 3 years and then using an auditor, again, the same auditor we've used for 9 years. I think that it's important that every now and then that a fresh set of eyes come in and kind of, just put a check on the auditor that we're hiring. I understand that there's members that believe that continuity is valuable and that they kind of know how we do business, but a fresh perspective and independence is always a good thing to have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Does the partner ever change?
The partner does change.
How
Yes.
often does the partner change?
I believe it's every 3 years.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the partner provides a level of review over the staff, obviously, and reviews the report, correct?
They do. They do.
And the reason that the partner changes is to address the issue that Mr. Dombrowski raised, right?
That is correct.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Nay.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw.
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mrs. Burke.
Aye. Okay, we have our Board of Education negotiations process discussion. Last month, we had a discussion to bring this to the agenda, and we charged the superintendent with collecting our thoughts and feedback on this, and he has collected from each and every board member and has consolidated everybody's thoughts into 3 main categories. And I believe it would make some sense to just kind of work through those categories. Does that work for everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first main category that we wanted to talk about was communications. So anybody would like to lead off the conversation regarding the communications of board negotiations?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll begin, and I hope I'm on target for your thought of communication. I think it's important that our community understand that every board member had input into reviewing our budget and helping determine how we go forward with the process. And I think that was important. I don't know if I should add right now about a board member on the team, or you want me to wait on that?
That's the second theme.
Second thing.
theme.
Okay, and I think that, obviously I must be missing something because I didn't have that. But I think communication is important, and I think maybe between our board meetings and in our closed session, we kept everybody up to date as to what was going on. I think maybe some of the frustration that maybe had occurred was because the negotiations went quite a while. So maybe in that sense, we didn't communicate well enough as to where we were at. And I know people had expressed some concerns on that, but I think in the long run, we did do a good job of it, of sharing the information that we could, because confidentiality is extremely important. And I think this board really honored the whole negotiation process and the confidentiality and everything that went with it.
Thank you. I would agree that, there's a fine line, and it gets confusing at times because we as a board are so in it, right, in the communication piece of it. One of the things that I think we could have done better is that I do think it would have maybe made sense to to post our calendar of our meeting dates of when the team was meeting, just so that would give some form of a timeline, so that if people had any questions regarding some kind of disconnect, it wouldn't appear to be a disconnect if there was calendar dates. Doesn't necessarily mean we would necessarily need to give an update after each one, because negotiations is ever evolving. So there may not be something to report, but at least it would give some continuity to people who were paying attention a little bit more than others, versus going from, oh, they're in contract negotiations, oh, okay, wait, we're in a different spot, where if there's dates linking that together, that might help.
I think the communication, I agree that our calendar would be useful. I think we have to have regular communication towards progress. I think the issue was, in the community that I got feedback from, was we had conveyed in June that we were progressing positively, and then all of a sudden in November, we're moving backwards. And I think we have to find a way to communicate that and not leave the community with the impression that things are rosy if they're not.
I concur. I'd like to see a more, like everybody's already talking about, a more structured communication plan and time points, milestones. And I know we can't necessarily divulge the content of the negotiation and what's being communicated between the two parties, but to Pete's point, to give let the community know the temperament or the tempo of how the negotiations are going, so that there aren't any surprises. I think that was a real concern to the community, is how surprised they were, again, to Pete's point, from what they thought things were. So I think having some kind of, and it doesn't have to be after every meeting, but just if we schedule certain touch points with them to give them an update as much as we can, I think that would be helpful to them.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so tricky, right? Because if you communicate out, you want to communicate out and provide information with substance that people can really tie on to, right? And so, no, I find it difficult. And so as much as I agree, I also would just, share out that, people also don't like to hear nothing. Like, nothing in content. People don't read our information if we don't put substance in it as well. So I think it's definitely a spot where we can do better, and in the next round, I hope we do.
I also think, looking back, we have a different perspective on the different points in time than we did then. I think at different points during the process, we never would have said that we were going to get to the point that we got to. And I think that the administration and the board was consistently optimistic that we were going to reach, an agreement. And I don't know that we would have ever communicated anything other than that in reality. So while I agree, it's interesting to think about what that communication may have been, and again, if it would have been of value.
Hindsight is really good.
Yeah.
And, we experienced that and we went through that. And I think at any given time, things can change. So things can be going well, and then something comes up and it becomes an issue, and you have to end up dealing with that. And until you can get through that part, other things don't move. So I think we learned a lot about this negotiation process, and I think, as we said, communication is important. I think especially the communication with the superintendent and the board, and us being able to talk about it in our closed session and see how we move forward. I think those things are vital. And then we can share what we can share, and other things, again, because of confidentiality, we just can't. But I think, we do have to bring forth whatever we can.
Right, and I think something even as simple that became contentious, that, again, in hindsight, we can simply say, okay, this meeting was canceled at this time due to these reasons, so that 3 months later, it's like, you don't get into this miscommunication about why that meeting was canceled, who wasn't willing to come to the table. If you establish that at that milestone point or at that meeting point, and you just make it a statement, hey, this is why this didn't happen, we can move on and it doesn't become contentious down the road.
And I think you're right, just, to clarify so everyone has the right information, so there's not misinformation out there. So those are valid points.
Yeah, as far as meetings getting canceled or changed, or I mean, they can be for very valid reasons. They could be for very trivial reasons.
It could be for strategic reasons.
Right. So to call it out as far as why it's canceled, I think saying, okay, if you had a calendar and you had a meeting in June and it was canceled, and then the next meeting happens in December, without putting in like, so-and-so on the team had a doctor's appointment. I mean, that really doesn't add a tremendous amount of value. Coming at the other side with, oh, you canceled strategically, that just kind of fuels a fire sometimes. And I don't know if it solves what would be trying to accomplish. So I think timelines, communication, touch points, those are all good things to look at moving forward. I do want to go on another little side of communication, a communication amongst ourselves, communication amongst our negotiating team, our legal team. I think we as a board, although not many people got to witness it because we were not in public doing it, I think we did a good job. I think we worked through a lot of hard topics with very mindful, considerate thought process for the community, for each other as working components, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that, that regardless of what position we have as individuals, we work collectively for the goal, and that was done well. So thank you for doing that.
If you could coordinate that with the union so it can be a consistent and unified message that the community receives, I think that'll be great.
Good point.
What's the next one?
Okay, guys good? All right, our next one is the Board of Education represented in negotiations. And I know you wanted to touch upon that,
Yeah,
Anna.
I will throw that out. That was something that I thought was very important in all the years that I've been serving on the board, is having a board member. Basically, the board member, which I had an opportunity to serve in that role, was just to be a silent observer. That was strictly the role. I don't have the expertise that Lauren has, or that Dr. Small has, or Dr. Cates, or our attorney. And in all honesty, I don't think any of us really do.
Agreed.
So in the future, I would strongly encourage us to always have a board member sitting there at the board. I think it's worthwhile. I think it gives the union well, hopefully, you know, they take it as being very important, because everything affects that. The salaries, all the projects, everything is part of our budget. So I really believe that having a board member just as an observer, and then, you know, being able to caucus or make certain that the board perspective is being followed, presented, whatever you might want to say, I think that was very important. So,
No, I definitely agree. I think it was very helpful to get your opinion as to what was going on in some of the negotiations, because our staff looks at it from one way, you as a board member looks at it from a different way, and more out of respect to the public. But I mean, still maintaining that neutral standpoint, I think was good, because we didn't want to express something wrong or different to the union, where the union's going to say, well, the board thinks this, but the administration thinks this. I think you did a very good job.
I could sit very quietly. So.
I have a couple of comments. One is I appreciate your bringing information back from your perspective. It added another set of eyes and ears to what was going on, and to hear your perspective of things, I think was very helpful. One thing I want to mention is I'm also a proponent of having a board representative as part of the negotiation team in an observant kind of way. I thought that was very useful for us. One thing I want to mention is that in choosing whoever that individual is, we need to make sure that that individual is able to meet those responsibilities, but also has the availability to attend those meetings. Because there were some lengthy meetings, so that someone is able to fulfill that part of the responsibility of being able to attend. And that's definitely something I think we should just keep in mind next time around.
Great.
To just finish up that point, I know that we released the information of who the board member was going to be later. I think that there were people asking, it might make sense to be forthright with that information. I don't think that withholding the disclosure of which board member is going to represent on the team did a benefit or a disservice. I think it should just kind of be upfront when the decision's made.
Held it very long.
And secondly, I would say we should expand this to all negotiations and not just the large teacher union negotiation. I think the experience is beneficial to all board members, regardless of the scale of the contract.
I think one of the other things regarding us representing the board, the team concept, I think we could have done a better job really making sure that everybody understood the concept of the team, and that there's not one person on that team negotiating on their own. The team had parameters, the team had goals, the team, and that the board's attorney was the lead on that, and that those are some critical components for people to understand too, not only who the players are, but how the players function within the team. All right, how good? Move on? All right. Timing and sequencing and negotiation, scheduling, we kind of worked through that a little bit through communication. Is there anything additional anybody would want to add?
I know originally when we started talking about the negotiations, we talk about the meetings being in the afternoon and going into the evening hours. I know sometimes that's hard for the teachers in that, but maybe that kind of needs to be balanced again, because most of the meetings were during the day. I know I had some flexibility at work and took vacation time and things of that nature to make sure that I was there. But maybe in the future it could be a balance of maybe some day meetings and some evening meetings, which go to what Mr. Rosenblum had said. So that's would be a recommendation that I would have.
Anybody have anything additional about timing and sequencing? All right. Anything else in general regarding this topic?
I appreciate this, and as you had said, I think this board worked very well together. Everyone had input. So, no, I appreciate this. I appreciate the process. I appreciate the openness. And I think that is a good thing for the community. So I thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, potential topics for future discussion? Anything? All right, that will bring us to our committee reports. Mrs. Klimkowitz, would you like to start with NSSEO?
Oh, certainly. All right. For NSSEO, we had our meeting on March 6th. Our shining star is a young lady from Kirk School, and she talked about the skills that she has gotten to be able to go out into the community to do some different type of work. The kind of the highlight was about the transitional services, which we kind of talked about before and we've brought up previously. But this young lady came and she spoke to us a little bit. Her teachers were there, her support person was there, the mentor from Kirk that works with the different companies that this young lady was part of. She was there, she was also recognized. So the transitional program is just so meaningful for the students. One of the things that they highlighted on their continuous improvement goal is the transitional services. And they have what they call a practical assessment exploration system. And that is a lab that they have currently over at Minor School, which has kind of like boxes of different types of jobs. And within this little box, it has some of the tasks that might be required of that particular job. So the kids have an opportunity of trying some of those things. They had just gotten this, so they're just starting in regards to it. But they also talked about the career exploration with our special needs students starting earlier. So they can help out maybe at the school, they can see what people do, they can see what the staff does, they can get a taste of some different experiences. So they're really focusing, just as we are doing with our students, for our special needs students. So that's amazing. They also had a legislative roundtable, which was last Friday, and we had a couple of legislators that were there. There were parents that were there. We had several parents who told their story of their students, and they're at the different stages and what they've experienced. It's really very moving to listen to these parents and how hard they work with their kids and how appreciative they are of NSSEO and of the member districts, of all the support that the member districts provide in that. So they talked about that. Some of the things that came from that were some of the benefits that students, as they're reaching adulthood, might be eligible for, whether it's SNAP and SSI, any of those types of things, and how difficult sometimes it is getting through that pile of paperwork that you have to do. And they had asked the legislators, what can you do to kind of help us out in that realm? They talked about employers, getting more employers involved, what kind of things can be offered to employers to incentivize them to take in more students with special needs. It was a really good event. The boardroom there for NSSEO is not that huge, but we must have had at least, I don't know, 60, 70 people kind of hunkered down. So it was very good. I think they set a really good example of what can be done. And as we've talked about communication, maybe this is something we may want to do in the future, because I think it went extremely well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dombrowski, Ed Red?
Yeah, we met recently for the March meeting. Dr. Cates, Ms. Hummel were there. We went over just the myriad of bills out there. The biggest one that we were looking at was, I believe, with the physical education requirement and the structure on what counts and how they get a fixed number of hours, and I think that's being pushed by a group of phys ed teachers, and they're driving that legislation. So they're keeping an eye on that. We also got a discussion or presentation or an update on basically how EdRed as a lobbying group coordinates with other lobbying groups throughout the state, and they kind of champion causes and divvy up so that they can focus their resources and connections on very specific agenda items. And then the main meat of the program was a presentation on Stand for Children Illinois, which basically is kind of a pension funding pass-through for about 15 school districts, where if they have funding above adequacy, they would sweep the amount above by doing a pass-through into the pension fund. So basically you would pay into the pension fund that differential and then receive funds back from the state. And that was kind of the meat of the presentation, the way I understood it, if clarification's needed.
It was the earlier stages. I think people are looking for pension solutions, and this was one of them that came forward about how to tie it into the evidence-based funding components.
And they're looking at this resulting in about $400 million into the pension fund was their target number, and that was that meeting.
We have partners, thank you. We have partners for our community, that's me. This month's meeting was more community information sharing. The meetings have kind of morphed into, everybody providing their service, talking about their services and sharing out that way. One of the things Dr. Cates actually stepped in and we talked about after the fact was that it would be great if we could really work on when those needs are there, how we as the Higgins Education Center at night can help facilitate those needs. So that would be just moving forward, one of the things that would be great. And that's all I have. Budget and finance. Mr. Lefevre?
Yeah, we covered essentially new business item B, tentative budget for debt service, capital projects, working cash, fire prevention, and life safety.
Anything additional? Thank you. Okay. Mr. Young, I know we had a nice facilities report, but would you like to give a report?
Well, I think everything was presented well by the staff. The only thing I'd like to mention is the Media Center at Hoffman's open, so everybody from the board's welcome to go visit and see what's there. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, there's some announcements for our review. And that will bring us to entering closed session. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education enter closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, matter relating to individual student, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, probable or imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the public body, purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, and the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye.
We're all here.
Okay. Suggested motion that the Board of Education return to open session.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz? Aye. Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Settlement agreement and release. Suggested motion that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent or designee to enter into the settlement agreement and release with WT Engineering, Inc., including payment to the District 211 in the amount of $15,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz? Aye. Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Acquisition of real property, suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution approving real estate purchase of the property located at 538 West Michigan Avenue in Palatine from Pleasant Park Estates LLC for the purchase price of $172,500. Further, that the superintendent be authorized to sign documents for and on the board's behalf to consummate the purchase.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Acceptance of workers' compensation settlement. Suggested motion that the board authorize settlement in the pending workers' compensation matter as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Ratification of master contract with the United Support Staff Union. Suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the terms of the tentative agreement reached between the Board of Education and the United Support Staff Union leadership effective July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Discipline of staff members. The first suggested motion that employee Paulette Pupillo be suspended 4 days without pay. Further, that the board secretary notify said employee in writing of this action by the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Second suggested motion that employee Terrence Patak be suspended for 4 days without pay. Further, that the board secretary notify said employee in writing of this action by the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre? Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Notice to remedy for Jean Hedgepath. Suggested motion that the board adopt a resolution and notice to remedy for Janine Hedgepath, and that such notice be sent to said employee by Secretary of the Board of Education by certified mail.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Second suggested motion that Jean Hedgepath be suspended for 4 days without pay. Further, that board secretary notify said employee in writing of this action by the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Acceptance of retirement requests. Suggested motion that the Board of Education accepts the retirement requests of Robert Bachman effective May 2019 according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union, and Gary Hartfelder previously approved by the Board of Education on March 15, 2018, effective June 2019 instead of December 2020, consistent with the master contract of the District 211 United Support Staff.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Hinshaw?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz, aye. Mrs. Burke?
Aye. Any meeting discussion recap of tonight's meeting? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.